Hi, and welcome to another video by Jim the Car Guy. Today we have a 2007 Chevy Silverado. It's a 2500. It's diesel powered. Not that it makes any difference in this case, but we are going to be changing the front brakes, the front rotors, the rear brakes, and the rear rotors. So the right front is done already. The left front is what we're going to start on right now. This vehicle is extremely rusty. It's sat for a while, so even getting the wheels off of it was a kind of a pain in the rear end because everything was rusted on there. So I'm going to show you how to do this job, especially if the wheels or the bolts are rusted on there. I used a breaker bar, which is probably a 3 or 4 foot breaker bar, and I couldn't break them loose. The air gun wouldn't break them loose, so what we had to do was put a pipe on it and then get the additional leverage to break it loose and get it off. Once I got the mounting bracket off, the rotor just came right off, so it was not that bad. The backs were not going to be so lucky. The right rear, I couldn't even get the lug nuts off. We had a real difficult time getting those off, which we finally did get off. All right, let me bring you up there. I'm going to show you what kind of tools you're going to need, and as you can guess, we are going to change the rotors as well, because the brake pads themselves are fairly thick, but the rotors pulsate like crazy. You drive this thing and it feels like your knee is going to hit you in the chin. It pulsates so badly. So, all right, let's get up there. I'll show you the tools you're going to need, and we're going to get started. So, come on up front. Okay, so let me explain to you what we're going to do first, and then we're going to talk about the tools we're going to need. What we're going to do is we're going to come in here, we're going to loosen up this bolt here and this bolt here, and we're going to take those two out. Those hold the caliper in place. We're going to come in here with a small pry bar or a screwdriver. We're going to push those pistons back in a little bit, and I don't think they're going to push in all the way, so we will take this off and use another tool to push the pistons back in all the way. These are 18 millimeter, just so you know. We are going to remove that bolt right there, and we are going to also remove this bolt right here, and that allows me to take this mounting bracket off of the truck. So we're going to take this mounting bracket off. We're going to bring it over on the side here. We're going to take off this hardware kit right here. We're going to clean up below the hardware kit. We'll put the new one on, and then we're going to reassemble it. All right, sounds easy, but these bolts and the bolts down over here were rusted like mad, so I couldn't even get them off with an air gun. But we're going to see how it goes. Hopefully the air gun works. If not, we're going to use a pipe and a breaker bar. But this is an example of what kind of tools you're going to need. Well, first of all, let me just say we're going to change the rotor, so that's our new rotor. That's our new brake pads. And this is the slide pins, or I should say the hardware kit. We're going to use a small screwdriver, a file such as this, or sandpaper, or whatever you have to clean off rust. We're going to use a bracket such as this. Okay, and then we're going to use a tool like this to push the pistons back into the bore. We're going to use a small pry bar such as this to push the piston back in as far as we can. And if that doesn't work, we're going to use something a little bit bigger. Of course, we're going to use our air gun to see if we can save a step and shoot it off with air instead. Normally, you'll notice I use a 3/8 drive ratchet to do brakes. On this particular case, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch drive because everything is so tight. As you can see, that's our breaker bar, and there's our pipe, just in case. All right, so let's get set up and let's get started, and we'll see how it goes. So we'll see how this one is. So, all right, cover your ears. Well, that one wasn't so bad. They came out a lot easier than the other side. Pretty dry, but we'll lubricate these before we put it back together. Now, normally, I would have pushed these pistons back in, but the other side was very difficult to push it in, so I'm just going to loosen this now so I can have enough to get the caliper off. We're going to push the pistons back in as far as we can. And now we're just going to take this caliper off. And we're going to relocate it off to the side using this hanger here. Okay, you know what? We're just going to sit this up on top, just like that for now. It stays pretty well. But as you can see how thick the brake pads are? But these rotors are so far out around, they're pulsating like mad, and that's what's causing the pedal to be moving up and down really tight. Alright, so now what we're going to do is let's give it a try, and we're going to see if we can shoot off this bolt and this bolt. If not, we're going to use our breaker bar. We'll see how it goes. Sorry about putting my back to you. It's actually pretty rusty, so we're going to tap our socket on there a little bit. Well, better than the other side, it actually came out. Now, you'll notice that I didn't take that bolt all the way out because we need to break this one loose first, because if this one doesn't break loose, this whole bracket is going to rotate down. So we're going to try to shoot that one out first. Oh man, it's got rusted as well. This one came off pretty good actually. The other side was a real pain in the rear end, but this side came off pretty decent. So, alright, let's take our mounting bracket off. As you can see, they actually slide pretty good. We're going to change this hardware kit here anyway, just to make sure that we don't have any issues. So, all right, we'll put this down for a minute. And we're going to take our rotor off. That's a little bit tight, so we're just going to tap it a couple times and see if we can get it to pop off. Okay, now if the hammer doesn't work to get this off, there's tiny holes right inside here that you can screw in here a bolt into it to pop it off. But if that don't work, I take a bolt like this, take this bolt, put it through here like this, put this nut on the back like this, Okay. Now, you see that bolt is on there? If you had this rotor on here and you couldn't get that thing to come off at all, and you're in here pounding the heck out of it with a hammer to try to get it to move, what you do is just screw a bolt in here just like this. You hold this here with the wrench like this, and then you come in the back. And you see it pushes the rotor right off. No more beating the heck out of it with a hammer to try to get it to move. No more beating the heck out of the rotor to try to get it to move. Alright, let's just move this out of the way. Now we just take this off. And you can see how rusty that thing is inside. See? Okay, let me just tell you this real quick. These bolts on a Chevy is really not too bad. They usually come out pretty decent. But you get some of these Ford, these F-250s and 350s, those rear rotors on there, you'll break your coconuts trying to get those things out of there. You try this bolt on there, and I'm telling you, once you try this, you'll never go back to beating it with a hammer or anything, or even using any penetrating oil. When you put these bolts on there and you tighten it up, that thing pops off like crazy. A lot of times you'll have to screw a nut onto the stud, because when this thing pops loose, that rotor will come flying off. So this thing here, you try it, you'll see. You're going to tell me this is the best thing I ever showed you. So, all right, let's continue in here. Now let me just show you this real quick. Right down in here, you see this is a little bit rusty inside here. I'm going to come in here now and I'm going to clean this off. I have a tool that I use to clean this off with. If you don't have the tool, you can clean it with just some sandpaper, but I'm going to clean this up first here now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put that rotor on there. Now I will tell you this rotor, I've already cleaned it off with brake cleaner, so it's nice and clean on the outside as well as on the inside. So, all right, let's clean this up, and once it's clean, we'll come back and put this job back together then. Okay, now, I hope you can see okay, but we're going to take these clips right here and we're going to pop these off. You just get in here with a screwdriver, just like that, and pop it up. Now, I'm going to take this off. Now, you'll see there's two different size clips on here. You see this is the thinner, and this is thicker, so you have to make sure you put it back together the same way. We know that the thinner one here is to the outside, and the thicker one here is to the inside. And you can tell which is the inside and outside just by the way the bolts are right here. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to come in here with a file, just like this, and you clean up all of this rust that's on here. You see that rust that's on there? You need to get that rust off of there so we have a nice clean surface. If you don't have a file, you can use emery cloth or sandpaper, whatever you have, but you would just file it off just like this. Okay, now once you have it cleaned up, you just take and put a little bit of the synthetic brake grease on top where the mounting bracket is going to go. Do the same thing on the other side. Now remember, these don't have to be spotless, but you want to try to get as much of the rust off as you possibly can so you don't have any problems. Alright, now you're going to remember what we talked about. The thinner part goes to the outside, the thicker part goes to the inside. So we know that this one goes right here, like this, over the top like that, and you push it all the way down, just like that. Okay, it's nice and flush right here, as you can see. Now we're going to turn it over, and we're going to do the same thing. The thinner part here to the outside, like that. Push it over it. Make sure it's down all the way, just like this, right? And now what I do is every place that the brake pad is going to touch, you're going to put a little bit of silicone on there as well. I know there's a little controversy about using this brake grease or not, but I always use it. Just like this. Now, before we go any further with these brake pads here, I just want to point this out to you. These are the pads that came off the vehicle. You always want to, now you can see this one here is the outer brake pad. And you see the indicators in this location here? Always put the brake pad back on that has the indicator in the same exact location. See here? And there it is right there. They do have a mirror image, which looks just like that. See? Okay, so we're going to take this one here, we know is the outside brake pad, and then we know that this one is the inside brake pad. Alright, so these will go on fairly easy. You'll see they slide nice and freely in here. See, just the way they're supposed to, like this. Now you can put these brake pads on here, or you could put the brake pads on when you have them back in the vehicle. These slide very easily, so we're going to put these on once the caliper mounting bracket is mounted back on the vehicle itself. Alright, now let me show you what to do with that caliper to recess that piston. So, now what we're going to do is I'm going to put this here so you can see it. You see these pistons here? They're not pushed in as far as they're supposed to be, so we need to push those back in. So what you would do is you would take a brake pad and put it in here like this. We're going to take another brake pad. I put a new one on the outside here. And then we're going to take one of the older ones as well and put it on the inside. And the reason I do that is because I need to push that piston back in as far as I can. So this tool here, when you have the that much of an opening in here, it's a little tough to push it back in all the way. But there's lots of different tools out there you can use to recess the pistons back into the bore. This one is just one of them. This one is made by Snap-on, and I've had this one just about forever. And now we just slowly turn it, and you'll see the pistons pushing back in. We're going to take our tool back off. We're going to get rid of these. And the new one. And we're just going to sit this back up here out of the way, just like that. And now we're just going to leave it sit right there. We're going to take our mounting bracket and we're going to put it back on the vehicle just like this. And then we're going to catch the two bolts that we previously took out. I did anti-seize these or never seize them, so that we will not have a problem the next time it's here. So we're going to catch these by hand right now. Make sure you catch both of the bolts by hand before you tighten up either one of them. Now I am going to shoot this on with the air gun, but I have to look it up and get the torque specs. So for now we're just going to tighten it up. Okay, let me get the torque specs in it. I'm going to tighten them up and we'll come right back. Okay, the mounting, the caliper mounting bracket is 221 foot-pounds, so I'm just going to tighten those up real quick. Okay, and then what we're going to do next is we're going to take our brake pads. Now remember what I told you. The brake pad itself, this one is the outer pad, so we need to make sure we have the correct outer pad. As you can see, this indicator is in a different location. So this is not the outer. This one here is the outer brake pad. So we're going to put the brake pad here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our inner brake pad back in. So now our pads are back into the location where it belongs. You saw I put a nut on here to hold the rotor from moving around. Otherwise, if the rotor moves around, it'll keep on knocking those pads off. All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to take some brake cleaner and we're going to clean these bolts off right here. So don't go nowhere. I'm going to do it right here. Okay. Now we're going to take some brake grease as well. Just coat everything here with some the synthetic brake grease like this, so it slides nice and freely. You don't have to go crazy with it. You just want to have a little bit on there. All right. Now the next thing we're going to do is every place that this caliper is going to touch. Every place that this caliper is going to touch the brake pad, you want to put a little bit of silicone on here, just like this. You don't need a lot, just a little bit. And then we're going to do in the back right here, because this, as you know, touches into the brake pad, just like that. And now we're going to take this caliper, excuse my back to you, we're going to slide it over the top just like this. We're going to push these little piston boots back in like that so we don't break them off by accident, just like that. And then we're going to catch these bolts. You're going to screw them in by hand. I am going to snug these up. Okay, now these bolts, these are actually tightened in at 80 foot-pounds, so we're going to torque those to 80 foot-pounds. All right, so let's talk about what we did here. Okay, we cleaned up the area below here where the brake rotor comes in contact with the hub. We put the rotor back on. We had this nut hold the rotor in place so we could work a little bit without it moving around. We reattached our mounting bracket. We cleaned up where the brake hardware goes, and we lubricated every place that the brake pad is going to touch, top and bottom as well. We tightened up that bolt right down inside here. Remember, that was 221 foot-pounds. This one down here as well, we tightened that up too. We put our new brake pads in here, and we lubricated every place that the brake pad is going to touch, even on the mounting caliper itself, on the caliper. Same thing in the back over here, those two pistons, we lubricated where the brake pistons touch into the caliper. And then last, we tightened up our bolts on the brake caliper to the mounting bracket, and we know that was 80 foot-pounds, so we tightened those up. That's it, fronts are done. Okay, so the fronts are now done. If you're continuing to do the back brakes, then you could disregard what I'm going to tell you next. But if you're stopping now and you're just doing the front brakes on here and you're not doing the rear brakes, you want to get the wheels back on, obviously. You get in the vehicle and you pump the brake pedal 4 or 5 times until you'll feel the brake pedal come higher. What you're doing is you're pushing that piston back out. That piston has to be pushed out until it touches into the back of the brake pad. Once it touches into the back of the brake pad, then you'll notice your brake pedal is going to be nice and firm right up on top. And that's it. Your front brakes will be done. But we are going to go into the back. So let me get all my stuff in the back over here, and we're going to continue back there. So let's continue. Okay, now this is the backs. They're a little bit different than the front, and I'm going to explain to you what the difference is. The problem we're going to have in the back, you see how close this bolt here is the one to take the mounting bracket off right here. That's an 18 millimeter. That we can take out. It's a little bit tight coming in here, but we can do that. We can also take out the other 18 millimeter bolt right down here. But these are actually Torx. These are, I think this is a 55 if I'm not mistaken. And the problem is that this is extremely close over here, so you're very difficult to get in here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come down underneath the bottom here. Let's get a light so you can see. We're going to come down underneath the bottom, and you see that Torx right there? That's a 55. We're going to loosen up that 55. We're going to take out that 18. We're going to disconnect this 18 right here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the get my light. We're going to take off the mounting bracket along with the caliper, and we're going to relocate that up onto the top right over here, and then we'll separate it and do all of our work that we need to do in here before we put it back together. Sounds easy. It's really not that bad, just a little bit more difficult because of that bolt right up on top there. All right, next thing we're going to do then is we're going to come over here, and these clips right here, these you don't need them. You break these off with a pair of cutting pliers and you throw them away because there's no need to reuse these. These are just for during the building process. So we're going to, take those off. There's 2 of them, one here and one down there. We're going to get rid of that. And I'll give you an example of what kind of tools we're going to need. We are going to change the rotor because these rotors, as you can see, they're dead and they pulsate like mad. So we have a new rotor. We have a set of new brake pads. And we also have the hardware kit we're going to be replacing at the same time. We are going to need a hammer because that rotor on the other side was a pain in the rear end to get off. That's how much rust came off of it. So we're going to use the hammer to bang that off of there. A couple of half-inch drive ratchet, an 18mm wrench possibly, a 3/8 drive, screwdriver, a file or sandpaper to clean up the rust, cutting pliers to remove the clips that we're going to discard, a small little screwdriver such as this, and then we're going to need a tool like this to push the piston back in, and of course our ratchet, pry bar, sockets, and our torque wrench to torque everything back on, our silicone grease to put it back together, and of course our trusty OTC Spectrum light, and that's it. All right, now I did clean this off already with brake cleaner, just so you know. We cleaned it on the outside as well as on the inside. And we also cleaned this area down the side there where the parking brakes are going to go. So, all right, enough talking. Let's get started. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to break that bolt loose on the bottom right there. Remember I said that's a 55. We're just going to put this off to the side. We're going to clean this off with some brake cleaner. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take those two bolts and loosen those up. Those the bolts that are actually the 18mm, we're going to loosen them. Pretty tight on the other side, so I am going to use a breaker bar like this to loosen it. That was pretty tight. Now, if you couldn't break it loose with this, that's when you would slide that pipe over the end, and you can do it like that as well. Okay, now that we loosened it up, we're going to loosen it up with the regular ratchet. Be careful with your brake line right here. You don't want to break it. We're going to put this up on the top right here like this for now. And we're going to take off the mounting bracket just like this. See what you can see a little better here. All right, we'll take this off. Now we'll put this on the bench and we'll come back to this in just a minute. And now we want to push these pistons here back in. We have to recess these pistons back into the bore. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a brake pad on here like this. And then we're going to put our other brake pad in here like that. We're just going to put in one of the old brake pads for now, just like this, till we get it to move a little bit. And then we'll just tighten it and push those pistons back in. All right, now while that's pushing back in, we're going to break these clips off. You just take a pair of cutting pliers, grab it like this, and you snap it right off, and this is trash. Same thing on the bottom. That's trash. Okay, now this rotor was tight on the other side. It was pretty tight on the other side, so we're going to give it a couple of shots in the back here to knock it off. We're just going to turn that piston back in a little more. So we're just going to let that push back in. Now we're going to take our hammer and give it a bang in the back over here to see if we can knock it off. If not, we're going to do that same thing we did up in the front with the bolts on the bottom. So let's give it a shot with the hammer first and see how it works. Cover your ears. Now we're going to tap it back here. Now if this didn't work, remember you could have put those bolts in there like I did in the front. Now, if this part here is rusted, you want to clean it up at this point, but this one is actually fairly clean. So we're going to put our new rotor back on, just like that. Now we'll continue pushing this piston back in. Just push that piston back in the rest of the way. And while that's pushing in, let me explain to you what we're going to do. This is the brake pad. We're going to just take this off, obviously, and take it out just like this. What we're going to do is we're going to take these two clips off right here and here. I think I'm going to do this on the bench here, so I'm just going to pry these off like this for now, just like that. That's trash. Same thing on this one here. Just pry it off. Right. Okay, now we're going to take a file and we're going to clean this up right inside here, like I did in the front. If you have a file, fine. If you don't, you can clean it with a piece of emery cloth or sandpaper. But you're basically just going to clean this up right here, and you're going to turn it over, and you're going to clean it up right inside here as well. So, all right, let me clean this up a little bit, and when I'm going to run this off on my wire wheel and clean it up a little bit, and then we'll come right back to this. So, all right. In the meantime, let's push that piston back in the rest of the way. Now we're going to switch off this brake pad. We're going to take it out. We're going to put a new brake pad in there. That way we can push those pistons back in a little bit easier. Okay, we'll take our brake pads back out for now, and you can see that the pistons are pushed back in. All right, now I take a little bit of synthetic grease, and every place that the brake pad is going to touch, we put a little bit of the synthetic grease, just like this. Each one of the pistons. And then we're also going to put some grease up in here, because the brake pad is going to touch that as well. Okay. Now I have brake cleaner on this rag. We're going to clean off this slide pin right here. Get all the grease off of it. And then we're going to lubricate it just a little bit so that we have nice fresh grease in there so it slides nice and freely. Right? We are going to clean off the other bolt as well. And again, we're just going to put a little bit of the synthetic grease on this bolt. And we're going to put this off to the side just for a little bit till we come back to it. Alright, let me show you how I cleaned off that bracket. You know what, let's do it right over here, I think. Okay, now what you do is you take your file like this and you just clean up every place that the brake pad, or I should say every place that the mounting hardware is going to go, and in turn the brake pad will touch into that as well. And as you can see, it cleans up pretty well. But I'm going to take it over and I'm going to run this off on the wire wheel just to make sure it's nice and clean, and then we'll come right back. If you don't have a wire wheel at home, you can use this. You can use emery cloth to clean this up a little bit better, but you have to make sure all that rust is off. Alright, so let me continue with that and we'll come right back. Okay, now after you have it cleaned off, you're going to take a slight bead of the silicone and put it every place that that mounting bracket is going to go. Just like that. Okay. Now we're going to take our mounting bracket and then remember now, there's two different sizes on here, right? One is thin and one is thick. You can see the difference? Okay. Two different thicknesses. So this part is to the outside. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take it, turn it, and push it back on like that. And we're going to do the exact same thing right here. And if you're not sure if it's on all the way, just tap it on just to make sure. Same thing here. Alright, now our brake pad is going to touch on this stainless steel piece here, so we put a little bit of synthetic grease on here, just like that. Now, you don't need a lot, just a little bit, just like that. And now we'll take our brake pads and we'll put them back onto the bracket here before we mount it back on the car. Now, I want to point this out to you. This was the inner brake pad because you can see where the piston was touching on it. So you want to make sure that your indicator, your disc indicator, is in a correct location. So this brake pad is the inner brake pad. And this one, as you can see, this one is a mirror image. That's actually the outer brake pad. Alright, so we're going to put our inner brake pad on first, like this. And it slides really nice and freely, as you can see. It's very free. We're going to take our other brake pad and put it on just like this. And you can see they slide really nicely. So now that this is all ready to go back together, let's go over to the truck, and we're going to put this back on, and I'll show you how to do that. Put this on here, like that. Over the top like this. We're going to lift our brake pad up, so it goes on here. This one goes right there. Let's get something so you can see what we're doing here. Right like that. And then we're just going to take this. And bring this over here. And you're just going to spread your brake pads open so that you can fit over the top, just like that. You're going to catch your bolts up on top. We're going to catch our bolt on the bottom as well. Okay, now we will come back to these and we will torque those two 18mm bolts down, but we're going to catch this one right here for now. We lubricated that, you remember. And now we're just going to put it in there. Okay, we're just going to go over what we did here. We made sure that the back in here was clean, where the brake rotor fits over the axle. We put our new rotor on. We mounted our new brake hardware onto the knuckle, onto the mounting bracket here. We cleaned off the bracket to make sure there was no rust underneath there. New hardware, and we lubricated every place that the brake pad's going to touch here and here. We slid the caliper mounting bracket back onto the vehicle. We tightened up that bolt right there. And we also tightened up this bolt on the bottom here as well, the other 18mm. We actually tightened up this Torx, this 55 right here. And this one, as you remember, we didn't do anything with that. We couldn't touch it. That's it, we're all set. We're just going to look up these specs right now, and we're going to torque these back down to what they're supposed to be. And that's it, then we're all done. All right, so that's it, you're all set. All right, main thing is now when you get in the vehicle, now you're going to pump that brake pedal again. You're going to pump that brake pedal. The pedal is going to go down to the floor, and you're going to pump it a couple of times until the pedal comes up high. Again, we're going to have those pistons pushed back out to come in contact with the back of the brake pad, which then comes in contact with the rotor. And that's it, then you're all done. All right. I am going to retorque those, just so you know. I'm going to torque those back on, both left side and right side. I didn't do that yet, but make sure you torque them back down. That's it. We're all set. We put the wheels on, take it for a drive, and it's out the door and on to the next one. As always, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.